Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles and on this episode we're reviewing New Japan Pro Wrestling Strong episode 114. Now before we get into the video, if you haven't seen any of my videos before, we grade everything on a 1 to 5 scale. 1 is the worst, 5 is the best. Let's jump right in. We start the show off with an interview with the West Coast Wrecking Crew, Jarrell Nelson and Royce Isaacs, who are going to be in a number 1 contender match for the Strong Tag Team Championships a little later on the show. I really like these. I've said it, I keep saying it, and I'll keep repeating it because it's something I enjoy. I enjoy that they're incorporating these into the show. Kind of gives you an old school wrestling studio show kind of vibe to it when they would do the interviews at the table at the studio shows. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. Now going from that, our first match of the show, we have what's somewhat a Legends match. Rocky Romero going up against Christopher Daniels. These are two what I would consider underappreciated or underhyped legends. Two guys that absolutely, if you look back at their careers, they have had absolutely legendary careers, but never really were the focal point anywhere they were. Not by any fault of their own. I mean, these guys are amazing wrestlers. Just kind of felt like they were in that second tier always, even though they are fantastic. And I hate that I have to explain it like that, because these guys are two guys that I absolutely love. Christopher Daniels, one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. Rocky Romero is right up there. He's another guy that I've liked ever since I first seen him. This was a really fun match, a fun way to open the show with two talents that a lot of people are going to know. If this was your first time tuning into Strong, then you would have seen these guys and go, okay, I know Rocky, I know Christopher Daniels, I'll stick around for them. And maybe you tuned in to watch the main event because Tanahashi's in it, but then you see these guys and you go, okay, this makes sense. Maybe even after this week, I'll keep tuning in. This was a really fun match. Daniels gets a surprise roll-up for the win. I'm giving this one a 4. I really enjoyed it. Now coming from that, the aforementioned number 1 contender tag team match, we have the Stray Dog Army represented by Mysterioso and Barrett Brown going up against TMDK represented by Shane Haste and Bad Dude Tito. Whereas they call them the LA Dojo, but I hope they give this team a different name at some point because I think they're a good team. The DKC and Kevin Knight going up against the West Coast Wrecking Crew, Jarrell Nelson and Royce Isaacs. This was an okay match. I feel like at points it got a little too convoluted and there was too many people involved. I would have much rather have seen one team versus another team match for that number 1 contendership. With that being said, I mean, it wasn't bad. It just wasn't anything special. I don't feel like any team specifically got a chance to show off and shine here. I don't feel like any team was made to look better coming out of this. They all looked about the same as they did going in. Ultimately, Mysterioso and Barrett Brown get the win, which I was somewhat surprised with. I was expecting the West Coast Wrecking Crew to pick up the win on this because I could easily see them contending for those titles. Not a bad match, but not a great match either. I'm going to give this one a 3. Then we go into our main event of the show, Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Gabriel Kidd. This is awesome. I mean, anytime you get to see Tanahashi, it's a positive. He's one of the great wrestlers of this generation, of this last generation. One of the guys that's really laid the groundwork for where New Japan is in the world right now. And just an amazing wrestler. Gabriel Kidd, his story is awesome. I hope they really dig into that more because he's been out and open about his mental struggles and problems that he's had and how it's derailed his career a bit. He's a kid with a lot of upside, no pun intended. And this was awesome. This was great to see him in there with a guy that's already had a legendary career and really show off what he could do. He kind of took the heel role a bit to this. It felt a little bit forced at times, like he didn't know how to be a heel just yet. And I don't know if it was the pressure of the situation, wrestling someone like Tanahashi. I can't imagine being in there with a guy like Tanahashi and not having nerves, being a young boy that came up through the New Japan system. I mean, that would be the equivalent of going on WWE and wrestling John Cena, or being a football player and getting to play against Tom Brady. You're getting to be in there with one of the all-time greats. I can't imagine that the nerves didn't have something to do with it. Not that it made the match bad. Just you could see a little bit that he wasn't all the way on his game. Overall, they carried it to a really fun match. I really did enjoy what I watched, even though there is that criticism. I mean, I don't think you're ever gonna find a bad Tanahashi match. He can make the worst wrestlers look good. And I'm not saying Gabriel Kidd's bad. I'm just saying in general. So for that, I mean, Tanahashi does pick up the win here. I'm giving the whole thing a 4. Afterwards, I got a little bit scared because they did the whole respect thing. And with Kidd acting like a heel during the match, I felt like he was going to turn on Tanahashi, but he didn't. Which kind of made me happy because I didn't want to see him do that. I didn't want to see him turn. I wasn't invested in him becoming a full-blown heel. Which, again, I enjoy that they didn't go with the trope. I enjoy that they just let it be what it was. A legend giving props to a kid, and a kid respecting a legend. With all that being said, I thought this was a good show. Again, I say this every week. My favorite wrestling show of the week. Overall, I'm going to give this show a 4. The quality of the first and the last match were really high. The tag team match felt more like filler than anything else, and in a way felt a little bit rushed and a little bit not given the time to become what you would expect from a match on New Japan Strong. I expect a better quality match on there, even though we're dealing with a lot of times independent wrestlers and wrestlers in the LA dojo. I still expect a little bit better of a product there. Just my critique on it. Not saying that any of those guys are bad. They're all good wrestlers. This was a good match. It just kind of felt rushed. It felt like they weren't given enough time to make a 4-way tag team match really stand out. Like I said, I'm giving the whole thing a 4. I thought it was rather good. With all that being said, smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't, share the video, and if you made it all the way to the end, let's put Tanahashi or Ace or whatever you want to say about Hiroshi Tanahashi in the comments to let me know you made it to the end. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and this has been my review of New Japan Pro Wrestling Strong, episode 114.